So thank you very much for joining us, everybody. This is our introduction to crowdfunding and community shares. So I'm Toby Sanderson from Community Share Scotland, joined today by Kirsty from Crowdfund Scotland and Eleanor from the Rockfield Centre in Oban, which is a community centre in Oban which issued community shares almost exactly 2 years ago, I think. And we'll be hearing more from Eleanor later. But I'm going to pass to Kirsty to do the first part of the session. Just to say, we're using the webinar function today, so only the panelists are on video. There is the chat function and there's also the Q&A function. So if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A. If you'd rather speak your question, we do have the function to allow your audio. So I think there should be a raise hand button that you can press, and that'll make me aware that you have a question to ask, and then I can turn your microphone on and you can speak if you'd prefer to. But please do ask questions as we go. We'd like this to be quite interactive. Actually, speaking of that, we had a poll to do, didn't we, Kirsty? Will I do that first?
Yeah.
So we've got a quick poll just to check what people's interest in the session is. So you should see that popping up now. Just loosely speaking, what you're interested in. If it's not listed, please do let us know what you're actually interested in.
Just general interest. That's good.
Super. I will give it.
Yeah,
perfect. Right, so thanks for that, folks. I think mostly people are just a general interest in learning a bit more. I think for those of you who do have specific projects, please, hopefully this session itself is helpful, but please do come and chat to us about them, and we're happy to go into more specifics with you afterwards, and we'll both say a little bit more about the sort of channels for getting that support. But I'll pass to Kirsty now.
Thank you, Toby. Okay, yeah, so basically today I'm going to just introduce you to what crowdfunding is, a little bit about Crowdfunder as a company, and with the benefits that you can get out of crowdfunding for community shares. So I'm focusing on the crowdfunding part. Some of it crosses over into community shares because really the theory is the same, but crowdfunding just allows you a platform to do it on. So I'm going to share my screen and do a slide presentation. Oh gosh, what do we want here? We want Google Chrome, I think. Oh, now we're testing technology. We should have had a run through of this, shouldn't we? If I hit, do you know what I hit? Toby's at desktop 1. I've got options on here to share.
Are you sharing from a PowerPoint?
I've got a tab open on, it's a Google presentation.
So it should be, whichever browser it is, you should have the option just to open that tab itself. Mm-hmm. Excuse me 1 second, I think I've got someone.
Oh. Okay. Eleanor, are you able to tell me if you can?
Have you got it on your desktop? Can you see it?
I'm presenting that now. Hold on. I've shared my screen. Is that showing?
Yeah, it's not showing here yet. No.
Oh goodness me. Okay. I do that. Desktop share. It's offering me the option to open system preferences.
It's maybe not allowing share the screen, and it's maybe got it not set up to not let it share from a co-host. Try going into system preferences.
Sorry about this, folks.
I'm not giving a song while we get this.
Okay.
At the moment, Kirsty, it's showing on my settings that it's only the host that can share, but something's happening now. There you go.
gosh, right, now what have we got? Can you see all sorts on my screen now?
Yeah, that's you.
Brilliant. Okay, lift off. Okay, thanks for your patience, everybody. All right, so what I'm going to run through, a bit about crowdfunders, to say how crowdfunding works, the benefits you can get from it, the 3 key elements that are essential for crowdfunding, and then what support we offer through Crowdfunder. And on the right hand side there, you just see a screenshot of some of the successful projects that we've had through community shares. Okay, now the, sorry, we've got a bit of the slides blanked out there. I've got a feeling Toby might have to change that around a bit. So basically, Crowdfunder exists to tackle society's challenges by making ideas happen. The ethos and our purpose is to do exactly that. We've got very much a social ethos running through our company, and we're always looking for community projects, looking for help and supporting those, rather than focusing purely, say, on businesses looking to launch sort of shares and things like that. A few numbers for you here. So since 2013, when we launched, current amount raised to date is 109,163,000, and I think it's 200 and something on the end there. So that changes daily. And it mentions there about unlocking millions from our partners, because what we do in the background, Crowdfunder, is work with third parties to try and get extra match funding available. So some projects in certain areas of the country or a certain type of project might be eligible for some match funding for whatever they happen to crowdfund as well. 257,183 total projects added to date. So we are number 1 on Google. Their site gets at least 50,000 visits daily, fluctuates sometimes up to 60, 70,000, and we do get up to 200 projects added daily. So we're here to stay, we're doing well, and it's a really good, successful platform to have your project on. Crowdfund Scotland I'm going to mention because that's the team that I'm part of. It was set up, gosh, almost 2 years ago now, because we're actually, sadly, it's coming to an end in the end of December this year. But over that period of time, we've been working in 9 rural areas across Scotland, LEADER areas. And LEADER, for anyone who doesn't know, is an EU fund that was set up to help economic development in rural areas. And it's there to support those types of projects. So we were set up as part of that to offer one-to-one coaching for crowdfunding projects in those areas. So if you do think you might fall into a LEADER area and you just want to inquire, you can always email the team at scotland@crowdfunder.co.uk, and one of us will get back to you to confirm and tell you a bit more. Okay, Toby, is there any way of changing the position of our faces on the screen at all? I hadn't accounted for that. It's going to nip off some of the slides.
So on my screen I can see the full slides.
Can everybody see the full slides? That's fine, it's just me. That's all right.
If anyone can't see the slides, can you let us know in the chat? But I think it's maybe just on your screen, Kirsty.
Fine.
You'll be able to drag the videos to one side a little bit if it helps.
I'm familiar with the slides enough, so that's fine. So different types of crowdfunding that are available. So I'm going to start just quickly on the right hand side, because those are 2 that we don't do. So equity based is where a company sells effectively shares in their company. They're giving away the investment in return for the money from their supporters. Lending is looking at peer-to-peer lending, so companies, for example, like Funding Circle, a lot of people will have heard of, and that is, it's a loan, but just not from a bank or a finance house. Moving along there to the other end, we've got donations, which we do. So that is people quite often raising money for charity, for example, and they're doing maybe a sponsored run or, general fundraising, and that's a donations only. Then we have the rewards-based crowdfunding, which is what we are actually number 1 for in the UK. And rewards-based crowdfunding is where people pledge money in return for something, a product or a service or an experience, something usually that's quite exclusive to that crowdfunding project. and they have to pledge money in order to get it via that. And then community shares, which we do as well. So you can obviously set up you've got your share offer in place already, probably before you decide to crowdfund, and then you are reaching out to the crowd to sell those shares effectively and get your investors in. So you can combine the rewards and the community shares, and that's where it works quite well, because you can offer investment only for and people can only receive shares for their money. But if you do have people in your community who may not be able to afford to invest but still want to support your project, you can potentially offer them a reward at a lower cost, sort of maybe around £10 or £20, for example, and it can be something that's quite exclusive to your project, and it just makes them still feel a part of it, even though they're not doing the share investment side of things. Okay, so how does crowdfunding work? Some people are a little unsure, and they might think you're just putting up a page on site, on our website, and people are going to find you and pledge money. It doesn't quite work like that. You do need to think very carefully about your project. It needs to be quite unique in the way that you explain your idea. You need to set an actual amount that you're aiming for and work out how long you need to reach it. There's a lot of marketing involved. I'm going to come on to the skills a bit later. So you need to be very proactive in spreading the word to anybody and everybody. And then hopefully people will like the idea and invest in it. So some of the benefits that you'll get from crowdfunding, it's really good for validating your idea. So with community shares, you may already be at the point where you know the idea is viable. You've done a lot of work prior to getting to the crowdfunding stage. So you've already almost had it validated, but it provides the visual evidence, if you like, through a crowdfunder page. So if people are going to back your project on that page, it then validates it. They can give you feedback and you can get comments from them as well. So, encouragement. So it's extra support and encouragement that you're doing the right thing. Awareness of your project. Again, that comes to the marketing side. You are pushing it out there, promoting it and spreading the word, so people that weren't necessarily aware of what you were doing originally will become aware. And through that, in turn, you're going to get advocates for your enterprise or society, your project. Because if people have, again, invested their money, particularly into the project, they are going to want to follow the progress, they're a part of it, and they're going to tell other people about it. Learning new skills is probably one that's overlooked, but it's quite key, because with crowdfunding, doing all of those things, promoting, there's a lot of organisation and teamwork. So it might be maybe skills that you've not used for a long time, you've never developed them, but you'll need to. So it's quite good for that. And the extra funding and support, I've mentioned the extra funding that you can potentially get through Crowdfunder, but also crowdfunding in general can provide a really good case for going for other funding. So if you're going to any grant funders, for example, and you can show that people are backing your project, it provides a really good case to take that forward to other grant funders, and they're hopefully more likely to give you the grant. Okay, 3 key elements: team, network, and story. Okay, I'm going to cover each one individually. So on the team, so I've mentioned the skills. So here's just a selection of some of the skills that are required. You do need a project leader. Doesn't necessarily need to be, your key board member as such. Somebody who has time and the ability to just keep everything together and keep you on track. So there's a lot of planning involved, as I say. So we always say with normal crowdfunding, non-community shares ones, is about an equal time of planning to the live part of your campaign. So that's at least 4 to 6 weeks worth of planning, and and then 4 to 6 weeks of running the live campaign. It may well be longer than that with shares, community shares, because you've got a lot of paperwork to get in place. And Eleanor's smiling there. I can see in the background. So there's a lot of planning involved. Everything needs to be in place for crowdfunding. Making the video, if you do a video on your project, which we always recommend, you just need somebody with the skill and a bit of creative flair, someone who's comfortable in front of the camera as well, so you've got at least 1 or 2 faces as well talking to people. Writing the story, so there's a bit of creativity required. You need somebody who's a fairly good wordsmith so that you can get your story across in a very clear and transparent way. Creating the page itself, you need a bit of technical know-how to do that. Our system is very easy to use, but you do need to know how to upload an image, for example, or put your video onto YouTube. Promoting the project, that's an all hands on deck situation where everybody in the team needs to be promoting the project, but you might want somebody who is really good at social media in particular, because it's an online presence, which is in addition to any other sort of face-to-face or paper-based advertising that you've done previously for the shares part. You want to step it up in terms of the social media. So you want somebody who's really good at that. If you've got some young people who are really on their phones all the time, those are the people you want to tap into to get them involved. Okay, so network, this is a really crucial part. So as with understanding who's going to be interested in your community shares project in the first place, the same stands for crowdfunding. You need to know who your crowd is, have you got any gaps in your crowd that you've identified but you're not yet in touch with, and you need to work out then how are you going to get in touch with them. Do you know any prominent people in the community? Do you have any key contacts that would be really powerful and influential in terms of getting support for your project? So it's something we say right at the beginning, to sit down, and everybody who's involved, sit down and write down your list of contacts. Everybody will know at least 6 to 10 people, looking at friends, family, staff, volunteers. If your society is already established, you've got existing supporters and customers, for example, local people, local community, everybody needs to be engaged. And in terms of spreading the word, you need to use all the mediums available to you. So if they are existing contacts and you normally would contact them and communicate via email, stick with email. It's fine. You want consistency. There doesn't need to be anything out of the norm, but keep it friendly, personal and quite direct. Try and avoid generic terms like please help or will you give us some money. You need to keep it, people want to be asked directly and on a personal basis as well. Social media, I've mentioned, using that. If you don't have Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, etc. already set up before you crowdfund, think about that ahead of time. You want a platform where you can easily communicate with people. If you do have a website, use that and put something on there that's going to funnel all the traffic from your website to your crowdfunder whilst it's live. Then you've got press. Obviously, if you do have local press, even national press, depending on how big your project is, and it could have international interest as well. So any press contacts that you have, always use those, and a press release will come towards the end of your campaign. So when you're going to a wider audience, you've already got some money showing on your page. Events. Yes, we are missing face-to-face events, but it doesn't mean you can't do anything online. You've got lots of technology now which allow you to do online launch events and such like. And print, don't forget traditional form of promoting. People still like flyers, posters in shop windows, and things like newsletters. So yeah, remember the traditional form, so you're reaching out to all parts of your audience. And not suffering the impact potentially of digital inequality, and word of mouth. Keep just telling everybody, everyone that you speak to. So, your story, third crucial element. Your page needs to tell everybody that looks at it what you want to achieve, who you are and what you do, how you will use the funds raised. It needs to be clear and transparent. After all, these people investing money, and it's for the long term. So they need to know exactly what you're trying to achieve. This is just screenshots of one of our live community share projects at the moment, Save Our Swan in Gresson Hall, not a Scottish one, but never mind. So they are looking, it's a community pub. So you can see they've got a nice clear title at the top. They've got a video there with which they've got a nice thumbnail which is fixed on showing the amount of investment there. You've got nice bold titles, that middle screenshot there, nice bold title, and a screenshot of how the building looks now, and then an artist's impression of what they want to achieve. So it's a nice, clear visual image of what they're looking to do. And on the right-hand side of those screenshots, the second two screenshots, you can see the investment amounts are always on the right-hand side. So you can split those into certain price points according to how much you're looking to achieve. Okay, so I mentioned video earlier. If you decide to do a video, you need to keep it short and sweet. Around 2 to 3 minutes is perfect, so that you keep people engaged and their attention span doesn't need to be too long. So get someone to help you who likes to be in front of the camera. People do like people, even if it's just top and tailed, with somebody talking to the camera and some screenshots in the middle. At least get that. Write a script. It pays to be prepared. It will relax you in front of the camera, and you'll be more inclined to talk naturally if you know what you're going to say. And find the right spot as well if you're doing a video. Try and make sure the backing, the background is relevant to your project as well. That kind of matters for people to engage as well. Okay. Raising funds on Crowdfunder. There's 2 ways that you can raise funds on Crowdfunder, and you can you make the option when you register your project on our site. You have the option of all or nothing or flexible funding. The first one is you set the target for the amount that you're looking to raise. You hit your target and you get the money paid out to you. If you don't hit the target, the money is all refunded to the backers. And that's it, you walk away with nothing. That option is really good for projects where you know that you cannot make it work without a set amount of money, and so you can't take people's money, because what are you going to do with it? You're going to be using it for something else which is dishonest, really. So it works really well for that. It also can provide extra motivation both for you as a project owner and also for your backers, because it can provide that extra incentive of knowing that you're not going to make the project work unless you reach your target, and therefore they might just pledge a little bit more. You might just put a bit more effort into marketing it to get those backers as well. So there's positives and negatives to it. Same with the flexible funding. So that is keep what you raise, you set a target for what you want to achieve, and you receive whatever you raise regardless of whether you hit your target or not. So obviously that's beneficial to projects that have other funding sources to fill any shortfalls in their funding, and so whatever they raise through crowdfunding will help the cause. So it does exactly as it says in the tin, offers you that flexibility. Okay, so I've mentioned targets there. Targets are really important. Now with community shares, you've probably got, by the time you come to do Crowdfunder, a much clearer idea of how much you need to raise, because you'll have done a business plan, a share offer, etc. That will all be in place. But at the same time, oh, sorry, I have got fun going on there. I hope you can still hear me. So you might have a little bit of movement for how much you actually need, as opposed to what would give you all the bells and whistles for your project. Okay, so you want to start with the minimum that you need and plan to overfund, and we call that going into a stretch target. So you have an initial target and then you go into a stretch target, which is overfunding. Check the numbers add up with your network map. So that's going back to having listed everybody that you know, and make sure that, you know, based on your guesstimates of who might pledge, are you actually going to have a realistic chance of reaching your target based on the numbers? Lock down key investments ahead of the live date. So that is picking up the phone to people, asking for their commitments and getting them in early doors. So know where that first 10 to 20% of your target is coming from, so that you're not then on the right hand side going out to the entire audience on 0%, because that's not much of an incentive. Nobody wants to be the first to the party. So always have some money committed at the start, and don't choose that huge target without the plan to back it up. Okay, fees. Crowdfunder is a commercial company, so we need to make money. You get what you pay for, though, in terms of the support, which I'll come on to in a second. So their platform fee is 3% plus VAT, and we have transaction fees for it's all online card payments, which we use a third-party company called Stripe. And for UK and EU cards, that's debit and credit cards, we take it's 1.67% of the total being pledged, plus 25 pence per pledge, plus VAT. And if you are have an international audience supporting you, we do accept those as well, but it's slightly higher transaction fees, 3.25% instead of 1.67. If your society is VAT registered, it can be claimed back. And then the monies raised are paid into the nominated bank account minus the fees. So basically, project closes, share offer closes, and we hold it in Stripe for you. Stripe holds it securely, and then it's paid out minus the fees. So when it comes to the fees, because we've got that variable of 25 pence per pledge, we can never be exact about how much the fees will be, and therefore we would always say, when setting your target, add around 5 to 6% on to make sure you're left with what you're expecting at the end. Okay, so what support can you get through Crowdfunder? Project support, we've got one-to-one coaching. We have lots of coaches who are, some of whom obviously we have mentioned are based in Scotland. We've also got a team of coaches at our head office who are based in UK. So a lot of the coaching will be done email and telephone, but most community shares projects do get coaching. We offer workshops and webinars. We've got recordings that you can look at. This is obviously the type of thing we like to do to raise awareness, and we run our own webinars as well, so it's always worth checking on Eventbrite for that. We have loads of online guides. In particular, we've got 3 downloadable guides, one for planning your crowdfunder, one for creating, and one for running. And there is a specific guide for community shares as well. So I'll maybe be able to pop that into the chat section for you in a minute or two. We've got live customer support with our support team in UK, and they will send you personalised email advice. We support your marketing efforts in terms of you get that unique URL link to your crowdfunding page. We always have social media sharing icons on every page, so it makes it nice and easy for your supporters to share it with their friends and contacts. We provide you with a widget to put on if you have a website. You can put that on, and it puts a little box with a link to your crowdfunding page, and it shows people a running total as well, and direct link to the page for them to pledge on. And live project analytics. Every project will have a project dashboard, which just shows you where your pledges are coming from, how many you're getting, and it really helps you just to target your marketing. You can see what's working and what's not. And from a financial side of things, the benefits are, so a lot of share offers will maybe have cheque payments or bank transfers. What we allow through the platform is online card payments by debit or credit card as well. So really good if you do have a much wider audience. And when your project closes, we will hold the money securely until it's needed. I think it's a maximum of 6 months we'll hold it. So just, you know, if your project is involved in purchasing a property, for example, you want to make sure that that purchase is still going to go ahead maybe before you have the money released. And if it all falls flat for whatever reason, because we've still got the money, we still have the ability to refund those pledges, and you don't need to worry about that. Okay, so very quickly, how can you get in touch? You can email support@crowdfunder.co.uk. You can follow us on Facebook, we're on Twitter. If you're ready to start crowdfunding, you just go to crowdfunder.co.uk/start-community. All right, so I'm going to hand back to you, Toby. Hopefully that was all very useful.
Perfect, thank you very much. Are there any questions on crowdfunding before we move on to the community shares stuff? We can either have questions in the Q&A box, or if you prefer to speak, you can raise your hand and I can turn your audio on. Question: the gift aid on crowdfunding.
Yep, we do. You can click to have gift aid on your project. So if you're registered for gift aid, yes, there is gift aid available. And basically at the end of your project, you get a list of all your backers, and you would claim your gift aid in the normal way via HMRC. Yeah,
I think so you can't offer gift aid if you're offering rewards. I think it's only on donations. Is that correct?
It would only be reclaimable on donations. Yes, yeah. That's correct, because your reward would be seen effectively as a sale.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Any more questions? We can take more questions at the end as well if there's any more that come up. So I will now share my screen. Please just let me know if anyone can't see this. So community shares are they're a form of crowdfunding. That's why we've done this event jointly. The community shares are just a specific form of crowdfunding. Really, it's the same principle where you are asking a community of people who support you to put their money into supporting you. And much like crowdfunding, lots of people putting in a small sum of money each becomes a large sum of money that you can do something useful with. So community shares tend to be used for sort of social enterprise activities and community-led activities. And unlike some other crowdfunding campaigns, this money isn't going in as a donation. It's not going in as purchasing a product or anything like that. People are actually buying a share in the organisation, and the idea is that if things are successful, if the organisation sort of performs to its business plan, those people then get their money back, and in some cases they might also get interest on their investment. People are also members in the organisation, and I'll say a little bit more about that in the following slides. So community shares they're a really flexible form of finance. They can really be used for anything that you can make a business case for and convince people to invest in. So across Scotland, we've seen lots of community shops in the past few years, especially in rural areas. We've seen communities taking ownership of their local shops. We're seeing more in a similar style. We're seeing more community-owned pubs and community-owned hotels in some cases. Quite a lot of community centres, and we'll be hearing from Eleanor from Rockfield later, and also things like a lot of renewable energy projects. We've actually just launched a brand new website, and if you go on our new website, there's a map of Scotland that shows you all the community share offers that have happened, and you can see the sort of range of activity that's been supported through community shares. So some of the sort of key facts about community shares. One of the most important ones is that they can only be issued by two specific types of organisation, either a community benefit society or a cooperative society, and I'll say more about the kind of technical details of those in the next slide. But one of the most important things about them is that they are member-based organisations, and they're member controlled. So people who invest in a community share offer become shareholders. As shareholders, they have membership rights. And that means that they can stand to be on the management committee of the society, and they can also vote towards who's elected onto the management committee. And then the management committee then run the organisation on a day-to-day basis and sort of represent the members in that way. In community benefit societies, it tends to work on a principle of one member, one vote. So what that means is regardless of whether somebody has bought £10 in shares or £1,000 in shares, both those people have an equal voice within the organisation. And the idea is that it's meant to be very democratic and community-led, and it doesn't give added influence to people who can put more money in. So community shares are, the technical term for community shares is withdrawable share capital, and like I said, it's unique to these types of society. So community benefit societies and cooperative societies have certain exemptions from the financial promotions regulation, and they're allowed to issue this unique form of capital. So they're not quite like shares as you might be familiar with them in private companies. They're not transferable. What that means is once you've bought your share, you can't then sell it on to another person. You can't make a profit on your share. You can only withdraw it from the society. So if you bought £100 in shares, you would only be able to withdraw your £100 from the society, and usually that happens after a given period of time. Usually it's at least 3 years before you can withdraw your money. That's just so that the society can have time to sort of get sort of stable before it starts paying people out again. So it's a little bit more like having money in a bank account than it might be with normal private shares, as you might know them. So community shares, as well as being a really great way to raise money in their own right, they can also really help to attract further funding. So in some cases, we have some community share offers that fully fund the project. 100% of the funding comes from community shares. In other cases, it's much lower. Sometimes we have a mix. But there are some projects that it's as low as maybe 5 or 10% of the overall funding comes from community shares, but it really helps to secure grant funding because it showcases that a community of people support this and want to see it happen. So a little bit more on community benefit societies. I'm focusing on community benefit societies more so than cooperatives because that's what we've tended to work with more in Scotland. They're very similar in practice. The main distinction between them is that a cooperative mostly exists for the benefit of its members only, whereas a community benefit society has to demonstrate benefit to a wider community. So if you're a community benefit society in, say, a given location, you have to be benefiting the whole community, whether or not they've invested in your society. So in both cases, with both community benefit societies and co-ops, they're both registered with the Financial Conduct Authority, and they're governed by sets of rules. And the rules are very similar to the Articles of Association of a company. They're a little bit more prescriptive in certain places, especially around things like voting procedures and membership rights. And the process of registering a society is that you would send off your rules to the FCA for approval. If you were to write your own set of rules from scratch, it would be quite costly. You would have to employ lawyers. It would take a long time. So what tends to happen is that people access what are called model rules, which are essentially templates that have been pre-approved by the FCA. They're kind of ready to go. You drop your info into them and send them off, and it speeds up the whole process and makes it a lot cheaper. There is a fee involved in registering a society, so you would pay to access a set of model rules. Community Share Scotland provide a set of model rules that are £200 for clients that we're working actively with. There are other organisations that also issue them, and sometimes, depending on what activity you're doing, there are sometimes sector-specific ones that are useful. So we could help you to identify appropriate rules. The cost is usually up to £500 as a maximum, and then there's also a fee to the FCA of up to £300, depending on whether you make changes to those rules. In most cases, it's cheaper than that. In most cases, it's as low as £40. So I would say typically the cost of registering a community benefit society is £250 to £500, and the process takes a couple of weeks. So you would submit to the FCA, and it takes usually a couple of weeks to have your application approved. So community benefit societies are really, they're a well-respected form of community governance now. I would say really anything that you can do with a company, you can do with a community benefit society. You can employ staff, you can own assets. It's compatible with all these sort of community empowerment legislation, so things like community right to buy, community asset transfer. All major grant funds that I'm familiar with will work with community benefit societies, and they can also be they can achieve charitable status. So if you're doing charitable activity, if you pass Oscar's charity test, you can register your community benefit society as a charity if that's important to you. In some cases where we work with groups, we often work with groups who are already established as say a company or a SKIO, a charitable organisation. And if that's your scenario, if you've already got an existing organisation, you've really got two options there. You can either wholly convert the organisation to become a community benefit society in its own right. That's quite straightforward with a company. It's not, you can't convert a SKIO, a charitable organisation, but there are ways that you could pass assets over, but it's a bit more complicated. The other option is that you can create a link between the two. So you could have your existing company and the new society, and there could be formal links between the two. So for example, the society could agree to pass profits to the existing organisation. And that's something that I'll be happy to speak about in more detail if people would like to know more about that. So I have a quick case study here, which is an example from Bridgend Farmhouse in Edinburgh. This was a formerly derelict farmhouse in the south side of Edinburgh that's now been restored. It's set up as a community centre. It has a community cafe space. It has a training kitchen for vulnerable adults. It has various workshop spaces like a bike hub and a wood crafting hub. And obviously through a lot of this year, it's not been able to do those core activities, but it's been doing some really great work around food deliveries and getting food parcels out to people in the community. And this is an example of a community share offer in that sort of style I was speaking about, where I don't think the money for them was as important as for some projects. So the total cost of this project was probably about £2 million, and most of the money came from grant funding. It came from the Robertson Trust, it came from the National Lottery and a few others. But they still wanted to do this share offer a little bit to get that last little bit of money that they needed, the kind of last piece of the jigsaw, as we sometimes call it. But it was also really about building a sense of community involvement, giving the community a sense of ownership over this building and letting them feel like they were really in control of what was happening. So I've got a quick video to play here just to say a little bit more about Bridgend. Hopefully this works without any problems. Please let me know if you can't hear it.
Bridgend Farmhouse is what I would describe as one of the greatest examples of people power and community. It's not just a physical space, it's all the wonderful moments and the things that go on, and it's about inspiring people to grow and giving them a purpose and an opportunity to do so. And I think that's my favourite part of Bridgend. It's this, the more able, the less able, you know, there's this wide range of massively committed volunteers, and yeah, on a daily basis, my heart sings with that. The bottom half of the building is a training kitchen. It's designed for people to cook in a community way. A lot of food that comes is surplus food from fair share and various other contacts, so we're trying to show people how to be creative cooks.
How should he feel to say that?
I'm a volunteer along with everybody else here. It's really just keeping the people who come for the drop-in session between 11 and 1 on a Wednesday and on a Sunday, just keeping them fed and able to do all the hard work that you can see people are up to.
Well, what's really important to understand about Bridgend Farmhouse, the original organisation was set up as a SKIO, So it was a charity that was formed originally. But one of the things that was always part of the vision that is it would be community owned. And so to do that, we had to rename and establish ourselves as what is called a community benefit society with charitable status. One of the main reasons was that we could launch shares so that people could become part owners. And also it was to ensure that this building would be truly community owned. I think personally, having set up quite a lot of social enterprises, I don't think I'd ever set up anything except a community benefit society. I think it's one of the best models to set up for a community so that it can be sustainable, generate income, as well as seek funding to provide services for the community.
Ever since I've joined Bridgend, I'm doing a lot more things, like the big shed on a Wednesday day. I'm doing the cooking on a Thursday, Friday and Saturday in the kitchen. I was a wild child when I was younger. Constantly getting in trouble with the police and that, yeah. Ever since I've came to Bridgend, I've never been in trouble since.
I tell everybody, if I'm going into shops and finding wool and I end up speaking to someone, I'll say, oh, do you know that you can join the craft group? There's the Wednesday drop-in, and then we have the Sunday drop-in, and then we have a craft group on a Thursday evening as well, which is just people bring their own projects and we all just sit and drink tea, and eat biscuits. That's lovely. It's really nice.
It gives me somewhere to actually work from rather than sitting on the street. Mental health is such a big issue, you know what I mean? And it affects that many people. In the day's world, it's like feeling comfortable to walk up to people and start talking to them is rare. And it's probably getting even more rarer the more isolated we become with the worlds of computers and stuff, you know what I mean? And the more interaction we can have with each other as humans, it's going to be a good thing, you know what I mean?
Bridgend creates this huge family and community, and it's wonderful.
So warm the couples of your hearts.
The food is always fresh, beautifully prepared and delicious, so it's a real treat actually to come here for lunch.
Bridgend means the world to me now.
There's lots of new things happening all the time.
When you do something that's good that people appreciate it, that does something to your soul, you know what I mean?
I've got absolutely not got an inch of a doubt that people are going to look to Bridgend and say, what a great model, how can we do that? And I think it's going to be a massively successful model that will be followed by many countries. That's my firm belief.
So, yeah, Bridgend are a really great organisation, and we've kind of paired a lot of people up with them to kind of go and learn from their experiences, and they're always really happy to kind of share their knowledge and share what they've learned through this whole process. So that's definitely an option if anyone is interested to learn more. So for my final couple of slides here, I'll just say a little bit more about Community Share Scotland, which is the organisation that I work for. So we were set up in 2014, which is when the sort of current legislation around community shares came into power. So we're funded by the National Lottery and the Scottish Government. That says until March 2021. It's actually now until June 2021, very recently extended, and will hopefully soon be extended beyond that. And we're delivered as a team within the Development Trust Association. So I know we've got some DTAS colleagues on the call today. We work really closely with them, and we work really closely with development trusts across Scotland. A lot of the activity that's been happening with community shares has been initially led by development trusts. So our main purposes are partly doing events like this, partly raising awareness and understanding about community shares, helping people see what it's all about. But I think the most important part of our programme is actual hands-on support and guidance for groups who want to issue community shares. So we have a team based in Edinburgh, myself and two colleagues who do the sort of early stage work. So we would chat with you, whether it's over the phone or over email or whatever it may be. We would help you to understand what community shares are about, help you to decide if it's a good, sensible option for what you're trying to do. And if we were to together decide that yes, community shares are a sensible, viable option for you, we can then bring in funded consultancy support to help you to put together your share offer. That would focus on 4 key areas. So we would look at your business plan. We would look at things like how much money you need to raise, what price you'll set your shares at, what interest you might be able to offer, things like that. We would look at your community engagement, which would be thinking about who's going to invest in your share offer, how you're going to market it to them, how you're going to reach those people. We would look at your governance, so that's thinking about registering your society and getting all your sort of legal things in place. And ultimately all that information comes together into the share offer document, which is sort of like the sales prospectus that goes out to the community and gives them all the information they need to decide whether or not to invest. We also have a small grant that we can offer of up to £5,000, and that is to help with the costs of promoting your share offer. So Kirsty went into good detail earlier about some of the things that you might want to consider for that, and really everything that Kirsty mentioned would be covered by that grant. So most groups have used it for graphic design costs. They've had their share offer documents, designed to look nice, and they've had those printed and posted out to people. Some groups have used it for advertising costs, website costs, social media costs, really anything. It's quite a flexible grant. And we do also, we work really closely with a lot of organisations across the third sector and across Scotland really. So we kind of tell people that it's never too early to come and speak to us, because even if we can't help yourselves just now, we're fairly confident we could point you in the right direction to an organisation who can. So please do come and chat to us if you have any ideas that you'd like to speak about. And that last point there, maybe most important to most people, is that everything we offer is fully funded, so it comes at no cost to the organisations accessing our support. So I've got a quick pause here for questions, and then we can move on to speaking to Eleanor from Rockfield. So I think there's some questions in the chat. Great, okay. Would community shares be suitable for a community hub which may not generate enough to enable withdrawals for quite a while? Potentially. I wouldn't rule it out completely. I think Bridgend is maybe an example of one where there's not an immediate promise of withdrawals. I think the question mark you might have is if there will ever be withdrawals. And I think if there's not a realistic chance of withdrawals, you're probably better off just doing a normal crowdfund campaign where you just ask for donations, because the motivation for people to invest is really the same. And it's a lot easier and quicker to do just a donations crowdfunder. And yes, the slides will all be circulated, and we'll also send around the recording of this. Any more questions on community shares before we chat to Eleanor? Oh, great, okay. Over to you, Eleanor. I'm just going to pop up. So Eleanor is from the Rockfield Centre, and I think I've sort of mentioned a little bit about them. So they ran a community share offer, like I said, almost exactly 2 years ago, and raised £200,000, which is actually, in Scotland, I think one of the biggest sums we've seen for that sort of project. I think when we've seen more, it's typically been for renewable energy projects and for the Glenrivers distillery up in Dingwall, and those tend to be sort of more at the what I would call the sort of more commercial end of the spectrum of projects we work with. So I think it's really impressive to see that sum of money raised for a project that has such a sort of social good side to it. So Eleanor, thanks very much for agreeing to join us. Would you mind just saying a little bit about the background of the Rockfield Centre and how this all came about?
Yeah, and I'm going to just touch on some of the things that you two spoke about, because I think there's, having gone through the process, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight as being really important. So the background is the community. There was a building in the centre of the town of Oban which was being sold off under a commercial sale, and the community decided that it was going to be flattened, and they weren't happy about that. It was a former primary school, so there's a big community campaign, very quick community campaign. Probably within 6 months there was a constituted group in place, and there was a whole host of support within the community to save this building for something for the town. And it was established as a cultural hub with 4 aims: arts and culture, history and heritage, education and community wellbeing, and that just came out of the consultation with the community. It was a big project for the community to take on, but Oban's got quite a background of social enterprises. So our local cinema was a community-owned cinema. Our swimming pool is run by a social enterprise and has been around for 20 years. So we were kind of used to that kind of, if you need something done, the community just have to do it themselves. So we began the process of bringing in some funding to try and get the business plan in place. We did that, and we managed to persuade the council to sell the building to us for £1,000. So it's the building and the actual site. It's quite a big site, right smack in the middle of the town. So that was in 2016. No, it might have even been 2015. And then by 2016-17, there were huts on the site, which enabled us to do some activity. Because one of the things, normally when you buy a community building, it lies until you get the money all together to progress the activity. But in our case, we decided that we would start some activity on site while we were still trying to raise money for the main building. So we began activity, we did some fundraising, and then we went down the route of, well, how are we going to bring in what we now knew was potentially a £3 million project. And we started by doing a lot of local fundraising because we had to save the building. There was dry rot in the building, and the impact from that was we raised about 80,000 in about 6 weeks, just from local community support to be able to save the building. We were a company limited by guarantee with charitable status, and so everything was kind of in place, and we had worked out what our business plan and who we were going to the funders, and we were probably in a different position than we are now in the funding world. But at that time, community assets funding was opening up, and we applied to community assets funding, and I'm delighted to say that I managed to get 850,000 from them, which gave us a really good start. But there was a decision then that there was so much community support, we reckoned that shares were a potential option. So we investigated it, did a lot of research. Community Share Scotland came on board, and we changed from a company limited by guarantee charitable status to a community benefit society to allow us to go across with shares. The shares were released in June 2018, and the offer was out for exactly 8 weeks, and in that time we raised £210,000. I have to say that the majority of the money, though, was not raised online. It was actually hard foot leather, going out and really selling the project. And I think if we had just done the online share offer, we wouldn't have got the local community support that we got. So it's quite a long process, and I think you talked about 6 to 8 weeks or something like that, Kirsty. We started working on our shared offer and our documents and all of that side of it, and our marketing plan the August, September, before we actually went to launch in the June, and that was just in time, and that included changing over from a charity to a community benefit society. Anybody that is considering doing it, it's not complicated to change the charitable status, because basically we became a community benefit society. We were a charity one night, and the next night we were still a charity, but we went from a company limited by guarantee to a community benefit society overnight. Yeah. So the process for charity, the charity number stayed exactly the same. The only kind of caveat I would put in there because we owned a site and we had title deeds in our name, you just need to make sure that your community benefit society is exactly the same name so that your title doesn't have to be changed, because that brings additional costs. Would I do it again? Yeah, I probably would do it again, and I'm not sure but we might do it again. I'm happy to say to you that we're awaiting the return of the keys. We got our 2.9 million in, and well, it was we ended up doing a bit of cost saving and it went down to 2.7. Costs went up again and it went back up to 2.9, and I think we're just about finished our contract now, and we're hoping to have the keys back to the community of the main building in October this year. So it's been a long slog. The benefit of the shares to me as the main fundraiser was that when I was going to a funder, I had positive proof that the community were behind this project, because I had £210,000 of their money that they were willing to put in with very little return. So as Toby talked there about, we were probably one of the early community share offers that, and maybe it was us and Govan Hill Bath, I think, at the same time, were the early ones that didn't have the good financial return that all the other ones like the whisky and the hydro schemes and all of those had. The shareholder was going to get a good return on their money. We offered a 2% return on their share, and it was on the assumption that we were running at a surplus and that there would be nothing within the first 5 years. And I have to say, touch wood, anybody that's bought in didn't buy in for that reason. They bought in because they saw the ethos of the project and what it was going to achieve, and also because it was their community centre. They recognised it as being theirs, and I think that's a really important bit. Everybody that we did face-to-face, we did a few open days, and we had office open so that people could come in and donate their money or buy their share offer. I think everybody that came in always wanted to tell us the story of why they were putting money into the share, so that was an important learning curve for us as well. Keeping them engaged, keeping them informed through the whole process. So I still have regular emails out to our shareholders to tell them what's happening. Probably the last 6 months I haven't done as much as I should have, but I was busy looking after the community at the time, so I think they'll forgive me for that. And I think really the video side of it was important. Kirsty talked about a video for your funding page. Yes, that's really important for the website, for your presence, but we used a lot of really short video clips, so don't go and spend a lot of money in doing videos. At the time when I was doing the share offer, I was having to go up and down to Glasgow quite a lot, and on one of my journeys to Glasgow I stopped at Erskine and spotted a red phone box, and suddenly thought that red phone box would be a really good sales pitch for Rockfield. So I came back to Oban and then spoke to everybody in Oban and said, does anybody know where I'll get an old phone box? I want a phone box for Rockfield. Long story short, but we got the phone box and we stuck the phone box into the grounds at the Rockfield Centre. We did it up, we painted it up, and then on a regular basis I had people going into the phone box with their mobile phone like this, talking to everybody, telling them about the share offer to give them an update, or telling them why they'd bought the shares, and that brought a lot of local connection. But I think we just used mobile phones, short videos. I think I twisted every board member's arm, I think, to have put in their say as to why, you know, they were involved. And I think that personal side of it also helped with the share offer. The bits that were really important to us at the very beginning, the micro grant that we got from Community Share Scotland enabled us to actually work with someone who had gone through a share offer already, so they brought their expertise to us. And we're very fortunate that we've got a local marketing company here who supported us with the marketing, so we had a lot of tools that we kind of pulled together. It was hard work, but it gave us 210,000 that we could then decide how we were allocating it. For those of you that know how grants work, there is always a tie-in of what you've got to deliver for that grant money. with the community share offer, you know what you can do, you know what you can do with it, and you have the decision, or rather the members have the decision as to how that money was spent. I think at the stage we're at now, we potentially might go back to another share offer further down the line, but whether it'll be a full share offer or whether it'll just be a crowdfunder for maybe a particular project, we want to do X and we're thinking about that. Getting people to understand what it was about, because that was quite complicated as well. And Kirsty mentioned at the beginning as well there about how much, work out what you actually need to raise. That's important when you decide what share offer you're going to put it out as. So our share offers, it's a minimum of £1 is your share, but the minimum offer we put out was 250. So we knew that for the share offers we needed X amount of 250s for it to work, and we had a minimum of 100,000. So if we didn't get that 100,000, we wouldn't go ahead. But a lot of preparation time. That's the only thing I would say to you. There's a lot of preparation time, and you need somebody who is very, very methodical in tracking your share money coming in, particularly if it's not all done online, and obviously also because of confidentiality. So at the moment we have a member secretary who has access to the share, whoever has the shares. We have a blind mailing list that I can put out to people, but I don't actually know who all put in for our shares. So it is kept very private to the individual and that member. So that's another thing that's really important, is because I think particularly in a small town, it was important that we made sure that kind of confidentiality was in place. But I think we got a lot of guidance from Toby, and I think it was Isla at the time was around.
Yeah,
so, and it's just good to talk to other people that have gone through it. I think this is the main thing.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the support we offer, is quite often just connecting people with other societies as well who've been through it before. So I think we've passed quite a few people to you to sort of share their experiences, and you've also been very helpful with that. Thank you. So I think we've had a couple of questions come in. There's one from Andrew. Apart from the Community Asset Fund, Eleanor, who were other major donors or grant funders for the centre?
The Capital Works. So it's a B-listed building. So it was a B-listed building and a building at risk. So Historic Environment Scotland, the Lottery, the Robertson Trust. We got regional capital grant funding. We had some local trusts to put money in. We've had money from Scottish Sea Farms, the Queen Charitable Trust. Trying to think off the top of my head, I should know them all. There's another big fund at William Grant Foundation. Actually, if you go onto our website, there's a link that talks about the main building, and I think in it, it tells you all the funders that are actually there. The Co-op Foundation gave us a 20,000 grant, and they've given us an interest-free loan, a 50,000 interest-free loan, but that's through the Co-op Foundation, which I think was the first in Scotland that had been awarded. So you know, it's a whole host of, and we've got a lot of donators as well. So we've had our shares and we've had donators. But the main funder it was the Lottery, and it was Community Assets Fund, which is now I think closed. We did painfully go through the LEADER process and withdrew from the LEADER process because it put the whole project in jeopardy. So we withdrew it, and I had to then find another 400,000 in about 3 months before the contract was due to go out. So it wasn't easy.
Of those grant funds, were any of them sort of explicitly conditional on their community share offer, or did it just sort of help the application that you were?
It just helped the application, but a lot of them, remembering that we were already being active on the site, so it wasn't an empty building that was sitting, or there wasn't a building that hadn't done anything with. So we had a lot of activities which showed community need and also community involvement. But I think the fact that you had community shares and that the shares were being responded to showed that there was community commitment. So it all helped with the need, because every funder wanted to show what was the need and where was the community involved and how was the community involved. So remember, every member has a say. So it's a completely voluntary board, and it's the members that make the decision as to who the board members are. So the members very much have their say in how it's run. And I think our initial engagement was really important as well. There were 4 themes that I mentioned at the very beginning. I was involved with the community engagement at the very beginning, and from that was the 4 kind of things that came through from everything that everybody was saying they wanted in this building. That was the 4 themes that came through, and I'll be honest with you that because there was 4 themes and I could see that I could go to different funders under each of the headings, I kept the 4 themes to make sure that I had a widespread, because I know it was going to be difficult to bring in the capital money. But a bit of me says it was a lucky time for us, you know. I think one of the things for the funders, we had them all round the table, and I'm trying to, I think Isla was at that meeting. We invited everybody to come to the Rockfield Centre, all the potential funders to come to the Rockfield Centre and sit round the table and talk about what was possible. And I can remember taking them all into the building in its state and persuading them as to what it was going to look like. And by the time they came out, I think I had probably hooked the majority of them, but that made a difference. But by that stage, we had already got the community assets funding from the lottery, which showed that we had already gone through like the whole business. They had to scrutinise the business plan and all of that side of it. One other one that I've just remembered, Hugh Fraser Foundation was another one they got money from. So it's a whole range.
Super. Okay, we've had a couple more questions. Do you think you could have been as successful if you just done a crowdfunder instead of a community share offer?
No.
Maybe one thing we've not really mentioned actually is the social investment tax relief. So I think I'm right in saying Rockfield was eligible for SIT.
It didn't actually go through to the tax relief stage. Okay. There was a change because mainly because when they looked at the business, we did get accreditation. So we went through the validation process for our shared offer, but the tax in the end it didn't, because we were going to have some commercial activity in the centre when it was finished, so they felt that it wasn't liable, it wasn't viable. But we went back to any share offer at that stage, anybody that had bought shares at that stage, and said, you know, you can withdraw it if you're not happy with this, and nobody withdrew any money. And no, I don't think if we'd only gone for crowdfunder, no, it wouldn't work, because I think it was the buy-in.
Yeah, you said before that you didn't feel like you had the big financial incentive that others do, but I mean, I think you've got quite a generous interest rate. Is it not 3% as the target?
It was 2%. Yes, it is. I mean, it is. And I suppose if you looked at it with bank rates, yes, it is. But at that time, it wasn't. You know, I think it was something like, the difference was something like 9, 10, maybe even more % that were getting back from if you were buying into a distillery or if you were buying into a hydro scheme. So, you know, I think the benefit of the share offer was that you had this contact, and I think the investors all felt that they had a bit of the building. That's the bit that I think that they really felt as if we've really helped to make this happen, and we've continued to encourage them to feel that that's what they've done. And you know, I think it's the ownership, and hopefully, I mean, I think it's been proven in the past that if people have got a buy-in, either through crowdfunder or through shares, if they've got a buy-in to the project, that they're more likely to support it further down the line. So, you know, in the post-COVID world, when we can actually get together and we put on events in these big open spaces, that we will have an audience that will want to come out because they know they helped to make that building reopen.
Definitely. I think that's what we saw with Bridgend. That's what I was touching on, is that people are very actively involved in it now because they feel like it's their community, it's their building. And I think there's something really powerful in the sort of sense of community that builds. Okay. Another question, follow up on whether shareholders would ever get money back. Is the assumption that because that wasn't their main motivation, that it didn't matter so much if people, do you think people were sort of expecting to get their money back, or was it not really that important?
No. I can remember there was one couple come in, we had the first day of our share offer, we opened up the huts and we had a handheld. We would, we had the handheld so they could pay by card or they could come in with cash or whatever. And then there was a couple came in and they gave they took out quite a generous share. And the story to me was, we only moved to Oban 2 years ago. And in that time, the Rockfield Centre has been our community, so we want to support. And it was just so, and I've spoken to them since, and they still see that as being really important to their move to Oban. Yeah. That they were welcomed in to a community and they wanted to pay it back to the wider community. So I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there is the odd one that will want their money back, but I think the majority know. And I think Kirsty touched on it, making sure that you've got investors ready to go in at the beginning. We did have investors ready, but we didn't have over-the-door investors, so we had investors ready to go online, to put their donation in online, but we had nobody that was going to invest on that first day in the hut. And in that first day in the hut, face-to-face, we raised over £30,000.
That's incredible. Yeah.
So you can see that, that the people side of it was really important. Being passionate about the project, you can probably tell I'm passionate about the project. I've been around it for too long. Being passionate about the project, knowing it's got a sustainable future, and actually having people that are willing to go out. So if it sounds really bad with COVID, but it's a bit like COVID. If you're the person, our chairman used to talk about, when he would do a talk about what the community shares were about and all the rest of it, he used to treat it the same as we had dry rot in the building. He says, now be like the dry rot, get out there and spread the word. So it's the same kind of idea. I think people to people brought a lot of shares.
I think that tallies a lot with our experience of where you do have a geographical contained community like a town like Oban. It is so much about the personal connections and knocking on doors and seeing people. Obviously I think it's very different once you get into something like Glenmavis Distillery or something like a hydro scheme where it's attracting investment from all over. I think in those cases the online presence is a lot more important, but where we see things like community shops and community pubs and Bridgend, Rockfield sort of places, it's so much about the person-to-person contact.
I'd say that's probably quite a good distinction to make, actually, is the grounds of your project. Is it something like a community building where it's going to be used on a daily basis by the local community, or is it more of a common interest project where you could have an international audience, such as a whiskey distillery, where they've got a product to sell and they can sell that internationally. So there is quite a distinction between the two types of products and the type of people you're going to go out to, and the response that you'll get as well.
Definitely. Are there any more questions for Eleanor? We've caught up with all the ones that were in the chat. I think just to say a big thank you then, Eleanor. That's been really
one question just come in the Q&A there, Toby. Ali, if you have a community benefit society with charitable status, can it still trade and pay out dividends?
So a community benefit society can't pay dividends legally. It can pay interest, but the way that interest in a community benefit society is dealt with is it's treated as a business expense, so it doesn't come out of the surplus. It comes out as a cost, and it's sort of capped. So the FCA won't allow you to offer interest at hugely above market value rates. So they say they cap it. It's a little bit woolly on what that actually means, but it has to be what they term as the lowest needed. You would potentially need a trading subsidiary if you were doing a lot of trading. It would be the same as in a company setting, depending on how much of your income was from trading. You might need a subsidiary, but you could have in some cases a community benefit society actually sort of acts as a trading subsidiary to a charity. So I spoke earlier about the potential to have two linked organisations, and what you could have is a charitable company or a charitable scheme which was linked to a society, and the society could essentially be the trading arm, and it could generate income which could pass to the charity. So that's getting into the sort of technical discussions that our team can advise on, and we'd be happy to chat in more detail about sort of specifics of your case. But there are various ways you can structure that, and we can help you to work out what's most appropriate.
You just have to be really careful with your charitable benefits. I think that's the main thing. And like Toby kind of talked about there, we hope to have a canteen in the centre, and the canteen, we reckon, will only ever break even because it's more like Bridgend. It's going to be kind of like a training place that people can go into and learn. So it's not going to be like a commercial canteen. But if it became all of a sudden, because we're in the middle of Oban and we've got all these visitors coming for staycations, and it all of a sudden became the cafe to go to, and was making a lot of money, we would have to look at making that a trading wing of the organisation. Yeah. So just the same as you would for any other charity.
So yeah, Ali, please feel free to email me or phone me, and we can discuss that in more detail if you'd like. Great. Is there any final questions, or will we move on to the sort of closing session?
Just Toby, just one thing that at the very beginning, when I was trying to explain what community shares were to our board, and one of the really useful tools was just to send them to your website, and there's really good handbooks which are pretty easy reads. Well, they're long, but they're easy to understand reads.
So we've just launched a new website, which has we've tried to make it a bit more user friendly. So we've added a sort of interactive tool on the homepage, and you can click through and go through some of the main questions that might crop up. There's still the handbook there. You can still find the handbook, but the new website is hopefully a little bit easier to explore and get a sense of how it all works.
I'll put a link in the chat box as well to our guide from the crowdfunding perspective. So the link in the chat box, which hopefully has gone out to everybody, it's specific to community shares, but that actually just takes you to the website, and you can search around for all the guides that we have on there as well.
Yeah, we do have another question that's come in. So with the sort of economic impacts of COVID come in, and the potential recession come in, there's interest rates might rise, costs will probably rise. Is the suggestions for how to reach people whose savings might be performing well in a bank? So maybe now that banks might be a little bit more competitive on interest, is there any thoughts on how you could still attract people to a community share offer? I think what I would say on that is the community share offer does have the sort of added value of doing community good. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add there.
I think in terms of reaching the people, I think you're asking reaching the people who might have savings that they want to use elsewhere. I would say it's the same theory as what we've been talking about. You just need to speak to people, use your networking skills. You just don't know who's out there in the community. It might be somebody very quiet that you don't normally speak to, or but by spreading the word, they might just hear about what you're doing and come to you rather than the other way around. You get quite a few very generous anonymous donations on lots of our community crowdfunding projects, and they want to keep it quiet, but they still want to help. So it's about just making sure as many people know what you're doing as possible, and they will hear it about it, and then it'll be coming to you rather than the other way around.
That still happens. I mean, during COVID, I had an approach because of the activity we were doing. I had an approach, and we got an anonymous donation to us, and that of £20,000. So it just shows you, they do come. It is about networking. I think the networking is really important, and making sure the story gets out there. People become, if they don't know about it, that's the thing. You need to try and get the story out as much as you can. We were really lucky. That's the other thing. Bring in your local press. We used our local press a lot and they were doing, on the start of our share offer, before we went to share offer, we spoke to them and we did a partnership with them, and basically they made sure there was a story went in the paper every week, just to keep triggering that. Have you done it? Have you put your share offer?
And that's something that we can help with. So as well as our micro grant, we do have some in-house capacity to help with press releases and contacting media. So we can definitely support with that with groups. So another question, I think probably for me, about the process of whether to transfer from a company to a society or to create a linked organisation. The question is which is the better and cheaper option. I think the costs really would be the same either way. You would have the cost of registering the society either way. I think the best option really depends on the specifics of what you're doing. In some cases it's better to have two linked organisations, in others it's simpler just to have one. I think the downsides of having two is that you have two boards, you have two management committees, you double the meetings, double the minutes. It's more admin. So I suppose I think it's a lot simpler to have one organisation if you can. But there are circumstances where it makes sense to have two, and I think particularly where there's an established organisation such as a development trust, it does make sense to have a link rather than one thing. And I think it can particularly sort of protect an existing organisation from riskier enterprising activities if you think there might be a risk of failure with what you're doing. But again, this is something that our sort of consultancy support would really drill into with you and help you to decide on. Okay. I'll just on that last one, you would have two boards. They don't necessarily have to be different people. They could be the same people, but the society board, most of the members of the society's board would have to be elected. So you couldn't say for sure that you would have the same people on, but it could work out that way. There wouldn't be any law against it working out that way.
There's a question there previously from Maggie saying she's got 700 plus followers on her Facebook page, but doesn't have the internet skills to build on it. It is one of the I don't know if it's a barrier as such, but one of the things that potentially needs to be overcome, I would say, the easy option is to try and find somebody that does have the internet skills and is used to doing that type of thing. The slightly harder, more time-consuming option is to delve into it yourself. It's under that heading of learning new skills. Facebook themselves have lots of help articles, so just Google, doing posts on Facebook, doing boosted ads on Facebook. You can pay, and you can pay as little, I think, as £5 or £10 for a set number of posts that it will then boost to a wider audience. You can select your target audience, because what we always say, particularly with crowdfunding, is try not to rely on just one form of promotion. So you have a lot of Facebook followers, but actually our statistics show that only 1 in 20 people that actually view your crowdfunding page will then go on to pledge. So you've got to do the numbers on that as well. So and reach out to other forms, other types of audiences as well. So don't worry too much. It is about just only using Facebook, but if that is your key medium for promotion, then it is worthwhile spending a bit of time genning up on how to use it effectively.
I think as well on that, with community share offers especially, you do sometimes have people who really want to support you but maybe don't have the disposable income to put money into it, and a really good way to bring those people along is to make the most of their potential volunteer effort, and that can be social media, it can be helping them helping to get your stuff out there. So don't forget those people. Just because they maybe don't have the money to pledge, they might still have something to offer in being able to help you promote things.
Definitely.
just on that money part, Toby, when our initial offer was £250 for our share, and we debated long and hard about what our minimum share offer was going to be, but that didn't. So we then just spoke to families and said, you know, if you have a family that want to commit the money together and put in the 250, you still need one named person as being the member, but in fact it can go in as a family group, and then they'll be recognised when they go into the main building. So it might be I'm going to say the McDougall family because there's loads of McDougalls here, so it might be the McDougalls that will be represented. So they'll still have their name on the wall or whatever we decide to do for the representative. So there's loads of questions they'll come forward with, and again, make sure that you know the answers before you go to the share offer. I think that was an important bit. We also did some training with the community shares just for that before we actually launched it completely. We did a bit of training just of the kind of common questions that people are going to ask you, so that you weren't caught out on the spot on the day when you were talking to them. So, and everybody had a script. Everybody that was selling the shares to the community, we all had a set script of what we were saying, so we all knew we had the same story to tell everybody.
Great. Okay. I think that's any more questions. I think we've kind of caught up with all the ones that were in the Q&A now. Kirsty, did you have a few more slides to do, or?
I've got some. I could just I'll pop through them. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we'll just say thanks again, Eleanor. That was really great to hear, and I think quite inspiring. I think what you've achieved, and yeah, it'll be really, I'm sure it'll be a very proud moment when you do get to finally get the keys and into the building. So looking forward to that for you. But yeah, Kirsty, if you'd like to just do the final bit.
Okay, here we go. You were away from the screen last time I tried to do this, Toby, and hopefully gonna work. Please work.
I'm not so familiar with Mac.
Here we go. Right, that's hopefully working now. Okay, so running from a crowdfunding perspective, this is so running your campaign. Now this is, so we've not amended that slide. It's saying 1 to 4 weeks here. It will, as Eleanor's mentioned, probably be a bit longer. Community shares will probably be 6 to 8 weeks. It depends how long you want your share offer to run for. You're in control of that. So what this is really demonstrating is a marketing plan. It's absolutely key. So the marketing plan, if you're crowdfunding just simply for your crowdfunder, not necessarily a larger thing, it will need its own unique marketing plan in terms of your preparing posts to go out on social media. You need some, you know, a list of them all lined up. You can schedule them to go out on certain days. You need some varied content and such like to keep people engaged. So, but first of all, you want to start close. You want to start just with the team, friends and family, whilst you get those first few pledges in. You don't want to go out to absolutely everybody with zero in the pot, as I mentioned earlier. So you're gonna work up to that. So in that first week and a half, maybe 2 weeks if you've got a longer campaign, it's those close to home. You then going out to the existing customers and supporters if you have them there, any partners and affiliated organisations that you might be looking to get pledges from, you then start going to there. By that point you'll have some money in the pot to show on your crowdfunding page. Facebook will really kick in at that point, or whatever social media you use. Facebook, we find for crowdfunding, is the most effective for getting pledges, but Twitter and Instagram and even WhatsApp as well are all very good for sharing the project and creating awareness. You want to make sure you're then engaging with local people and local businesses. If you haven't already, make sure they're completely aware that you have a crowdfunding page available with the share offer there. And then you're going out to the press releases, local press, as I say, definite, local newsletters as well, and any blogs. So if you have a type of project that has a common interest in it, so for example, the whiskey distillery that we mentioned, if you can just Google and find a blogger who blogs about whiskey, or Scottish whiskey in particular, then you want to be contacting somebody like that, and then you tag on to their followers to expand your own network. So they might do it for free, they might want something in return, but if you don't ask, you don't get. And that's essentially a marketing plan. Get launch ready. So before you launch the actual crowdfunder, you need to take the time to start conversations, make sure people know it's coming before it actually launches and goes live. Commit to a go live date. That will give you, put your stake in the ground, sort of date to aim for. You can move it a little bit if you go a bit askew, but yeah, try and commit to that live date as to when you're gonna, you need the money in for, and then work backwards to your live date really. Review your network map. You've written it down at the start. Keep it fresh. It's an active document. So if you have a place of work, who does these days, but if you do, have it up on the wall, or at least create it, if there's a team of you, create it as a centrally accessible document. People can look at it regularly and update it throughout the process, so you can keep adding people to your list of who you want to contact. Have those first pledges lined up. It might be 10, it might be less, it might be more, but we're looking around 10 to 20% of your target. Through a launch event, mentioned that already. You can do something online if you're struggling to do a community, a face-to-face thing. Promote through all mediums and engage with your project dashboard, which I've got a shot of in a slide or two, and I'll talk you through that. Social and financial proof. You may well already have this with community shares that you're doing offline, but in terms of your page, your crowdfunding page, as I say, you don't want to go out in zero. It's the empty restaurant theory. Nobody wants to go into an empty restaurant and be the only customers there sitting all lonesome. So you know, that's the first picture. You want to be in the middle by the time you're starting to go to a wider audience. It's busy, you want to join in the party, you want to be part of it, and then it moves up into the stretch target where you're overfunding and people are queuing around the corner to get into the restaurant. And that's providing that social and financial proof that people are interested. So these are the project analytics. It's key to keep an eye on. It's a dashboard, and you'll see the number of pledges coming in on a daily basis, how many pledges there are, and on it further down on the page, on the live part of it, you'll see the source. So as I say, Facebook tends to be the most effective, but you'll also see if it's come, say, from your website. If you have a widget on, it'll collect that type of data for you. And ordinarily with crowdfunding, you will see a peak of pledges at the start, then a trough, and then a peak towards the end. So, you know, the peak is everybody's excited and you know, they want to be part of it. The middle part is when it can become a little staid, and you need to keep that momentum going, really. So that's when your social media posts are absolutely key. And then you get a peak at the end where you've got a bit of urgency is created. We're nearing the end, we're about to close, you know, pledge now. I think that's, yeah. So that's the key message, I think, in terms of communicating. You've mentioned communicating already, Toby. It's really important to keep everybody in the loop. You can do that via an updates function on our pages, and that is going back to what Eleanor was saying about a lot of, with share offers, some of them, a lot of it will come in offline. So it won't necessarily show on your crowdfunder page, but what you can do is update your page to tell people looking at your page, you've got X amount, you know, coming in offline. You keep people, you know, in the picture as to what's going on. You've got that function there. Okay.
Great, thank you, Kirsty. That's really useful. I think it really echoes a lot of our experience as well. And I think the main advice we always have in terms of how to be successful is that you really do need to be relentless in how you approach it, especially for the campaign window, whatever that may be. You know, if it's 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I think you do need to be ready to be working really quite hard at it and just constantly sort of checking in on people, because a lot of people do need that, you know, multiple contacts before they will actually make the decision to invest. It's rarely a case of someone seeing it for the first time and putting money in straight away.
Yeah. It might just be worth adding, I don't know if, Toby, if people appreciate that actually Community Share Scotland works quite closely with Crowdfunder. We have an expert who works with Crowdfunder who will give everything once over, if you like, from a crowdfunding perspective, before, you know, if that's what you're proposing. So there's quite a close relationship between the two organisations. So you can get support from both sides. Yeah,
absolutely. Great. I think that's the end of our sort of planned session in terms of the materials we had. But any more questions, we're very happy to answer them. All the slides and everything will be sent round after this, and that'll include all our contact details. So please do get in touch if you have anything. I know there were a few of you who had, I think, specific projects that we wanted to chat about. So we're both on hand to discuss those if you'd like. But happy to take any final questions just now.
We're done.
No. So I must have covered it all, hopefully. Yeah. Great. Well, just to say thank you all, everybody. We will be running more sessions over the next few months, so keep an eye on our social media if you're interested. They might look into sort of more specific areas and things like that. But yeah, thank you very much, and hopefully see some of you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. Cheers.
Bye.